So, one would think that at this point, I'd be tired of talking about things like mask mandates and whatnot. I'd like to be over talking about it, to be honest with you. It wears on me. And I'm going to be, in an upcoming video, talking about encouragement. But there's a reality that we need to wrestle with right now, and that wrestling has to sometimes be painful. And if it's not painful, then I don't know that we're fighting. Fights aren't easy. War of any kind isn't easy, and we are in a war. We are in a cultural war. This is a cultural revolution. We are in the midst of a violent socio-political overthrow of the United States. I don't know how you can deny this. I don't know how anybody can say with any sense of severity or seriousness it's not happening, because it clearly is. And part of it is the subjugation of the American people to rules that are being made up by non-legislative individuals. And it started with governors and mayors all over the United States taking to themselves power to shut down businesses that they had no power to take. And there are arguments out there. There's court precedents, there are supposedly legal precedents that have allowed this to happen, and people make justification for it. But there are governors that are losing those fights. There are mayors that are losing those fights. There are governors of some states that are ordering law enforcement in cities to stand down from enforcing local municipalities' unlawful orders and restrictions. So at best, within a city or a county, the board, which is the legislative body, whether it be the city council or the county board, those are the legislative bodies of cities. So in some cases, even those legislative bodies have overstepped their bounds. But for the most part, it's individuals like mayors, county directors, if you will, and in many cases, it's governors that have overstepped. And there's no place that they're overstepping more or have overstepped more than where we see them overstepping right now, which is with mask mandates. And when I say this is a cultural revolution, that this is a cultural war, and that it is a socio-political violence that is being done, people laugh. Well, you're not going to laugh very long. And here's why. The Broward County powers that be, not only have they implemented curfews, just understand that peaceful people not breaking any laws have had a curfew imposed on them of 11 p.m. in Broward County. Broward County has told everybody, you will be off the streets by 11 p.m. I don't know why. I don't understand what 11 p.m. does to the COVID-19 virus. If you are really serious about stopping COVID-19, maybe you should just put a 24-hour-a-day curfew in place. Tell people you can't be on the streets at all, except to go straight to work and straight home. And maybe they shouldn't even be allowed to go to work. Maybe everybody should work from home, and those who can't work from home should just not be allowed to work. Period. I mean, if we're going to be consistent. But 11 p.m., very random, very arbitrary, very subjective, quite useless. Unless you're trying to quell people from being out partying in the dark. But I would imagine if there are riots, and well, let's not even call it protests, if there are riots happening, you're not going to do anything about that. Are you going to impose that curfew and then enforce it on people who are rioting over some perceived injustice that's been done to them? Probably not. So here's what Broward County has done, though, with the executive order that put into place that 11 p.m. curfew, they have, and first I'm going to quote Mayor Dale Holness, "I'm imploring the public to take responsibility, personal responsibility, to safeguard the health and well-being of each other. It looks grave from where we are." End quote. Here's the biggest problem. Of particular concern is a passage that declares, and this is from the executive order, "All persons who reside on any residential property, whether single family or multifamily, and irrespective of whether they own or rent the property, must ensure that all persons on the residential property, including guests, comply with all applicable guidelines of any Broward County emergency order, including the facial covering requirements." Now, you need to hear that again, and I want you to think about this as it relates to facial coverings. And see, at least they're bold enough now, they're not calling it masks. Because they realize that what most people are covering with, even the cloth pieces that people are putting over their faces and calling them masks, are not masks, they're just a covering. They're literally ineffective. Completely and terribly ineffective for doing what they're supposedly supposed to do. They actually build a sense of false security in most people, and it's destructive in the whole because of that false sense of security it provides people. But you need to hear the statement again. All persons who reside on any residential property, whether single family or multifamily, and irrespective of whether they own or rent the property, must ensure that all persons on the residential property, including guests, comply with all applicable guidelines of any Broward County emergency order, including facial covering requirements. So not only are you responsible to make sure that if somebody comes to your house before 11 p.m. that they leave and get back to theirs, you are now responsible for making sure that everybody, including yourself, your family, children, anybody that might be staying with you for whatever reason, have to keep their face covered while they're in your home or on your property. On your property. It doesn't say if you're outside in a group. It says anyone. All persons. Tell me again that this isn't about control. When will the American people stop being sheep? When are we going to wake up and watch what's going on around us and observe? And observe. Not just see, but observe. And see, observation requires taking in information. I can go outside and I can see the world around me, but I'm not taking in any information. So let's say I'm walking through the woods, right? And all I'm doing is walking and I'm looking around. I'm not paying attention to the flora and to the fauna. I'm just walking. And I don't hear anything change. I don't hear squirrels scampering in the leaves. I don't hear birds twittering. I'm just walking around aimlessly through the woods. Because I'm not really observing my environment. I won't notice when the cougar moves into the area where I'm walking and silently moves from treetop to treetop to treetop as it's stalking me. And then when I'm about to break into the clearing, the cougar pounces on me, grabs my neck, pulls me down to the ground, strangles me, insanguinates me, and then eats me. Because I'm not observant. I'm seeing, but I'm not observant. An observant person walking through the woods is noticing, oh, the birds are singing, the squirrels are scampering, the rabbits are sitting in the clearing, in these little patches of open ground, and they're eating from the dandelions and other plants. I'm seeing those things. I'm hearing the bird songs. But as I'm observing, notice the birds, instead of singing, are now giving alarms. The rabbits' ears are perking up. Their bodies are taking on a tense posture. And they spring away from their open ground and into root structures of nearby plants to be protected. The squirrels are doing the same. And then I hear, because I'm observing, the trees rustle. And I notice, before it's too late, that there's a cougar stalking me. That's observation. And I'm now able to take measures to protect myself, whatever that might be. How you're going to protect yourself from a cougar in the woods depends on who you are and what you're comfortable with carrying on you. But that analogy is where we're at right now. The American people are seeing things, but they're not observing. They're not taking in information. They're being force-fed a certain line of information. Wear face coverings. Let's stop calling them mask mandates. Let's stop calling them mask orders. They're facial coverings. They're being told, do this because this will protect you and everyone around you. Do this because you love people. We're not trying to take over your lives. We're just protecting you. We're just taking care of you. And the problem is, that's not what's actually happening. This is a test run. This is a shot across the bow of your boat. They want to see what you're willing to do. They want to see how far they can take this. And the American people have said, take it as far as you want. And now we have counties, and in this case right now, as far as I know, it's just Broward County. And I've been warning about this. Anybody who talks to me in a daily world, in real life, if you will, knows I've been warning. They're going to start telling you what you can and cannot do on your own private property as it relates to COVID-19 measures. I've been telling people this was coming. Telling you that you have to enforce a mask policy, a facial covering policy in your own home, on your own private property, that you can't be outside without a facial covering on your own private property. They don't have that power. And it's not enforceable. So here's how they're going to enforce it. They're going to wait for someone to report you. You need to understand this. Short of putting a law enforcement officer in your home 24 hours a day, most of which don't agree with these illegal and unlawful orders, short of putting someone in your home who will enforce this, they're going to have to rely on passerby. They're going to have to rely on the snitches and the tattletales. And let's remember, it was Garcetti in Los Angeles who said, you've heard it said that, and maybe it was Newsom, but I think it was Garcetti, who said, you've heard people say that snitches get stitches. Well, not in LA. Snitches get rewards. They are setting this up. They are intentionally dividing us. They are pitting us against one another. And if you think for a minute that if this works in Broward County, that it will not spread to other left-leaning Marxist mentality regions, you're crazy. You're absolutely nuts. Like gone. And I don't use crazy as in the disparaging of people with genuine mental health issues. I mean people who are just crazy, like they'll do anything they're told for safety reasons. And the quote is often used, and it's somewhat out of context, but it still applies. Benjamin Franklin said, those who would exchange liberty for safety and security deserve neither liberty nor safety. And that's a paraphrase. And that's what this is. This is an exchange of liberty for safety. And in the end, the safety that you get from wearing a face covering in your own home is not going to protect you from the dangers of an authoritarian, tyrannical government. And this will spread faster than COVID-19 ever does. And I got news for you. They may come up with some sort of vaccine or an inoculation for something like COVID-19, but there is no vaccine. There is no inoculation for tyranny. There's no shot that you can take that's going to prevent a tyrannical political official from destroying your freedoms and taking your life. It's impossible. Broward County doesn't have the authority for this. So they're going to rest in the reality that there are going to be people who are going to be willing to rat you out. They're going to rest in the reality that neighbor will turn on neighbor. This has nothing to do with religion. This has nothing at all to do with white versus black. This has nothing at all to do with white versus any minority or any minority versus another minority. This has everything to do with a worldview agenda. Marxism. This is Marxism. Watch my video about the Rules for Radicals by Saul Alinsky. Watch it, and I'll link it in this video. This is an effort, and a very powerful effort. This is going to have an effect. This is either going to wake up the sleeping American people who are only seeing but not observing, or it is going to lull us into a deeper, deeper stupor where we're just easy to roll over. This is why there are people out here in the world, and I'm not alone. And there are people out there who feel alone. But this is why the American people need to wake up. They need to remember Sic Semper Tyrannis. Remember that phrase. Look it up. Thus always tyrants. You need to start saying it. Saying it to yourself. Saying it out loud. Saying it whenever you see somebody who's wearing a mask and they look terrified if you're not wearing one. If you see people out there gleefully and blithely going along or blathering the talking points of the day, Sic Semper Tyrannis. Thus always tyrants. Sic Semper Tyrannis. As always, thanks for watching the video. Thanks for being open-minded. Thanks for listening. I would ask that over here in the corner, somewhere on your screen, you hit the subscribe button. It's important, not for me, but because mainstream media, legacy media, isn't going to get the word out. They're not going to let people who don't toe the established line speak. So for the sake of liberty and for the sake of the defense of this nation, small little independent voices like mine need to be heard, especially the interviews. It's got very little to do with my commentary and a lot more to do with the interviews and the people who are affected when liberties are tread on. So once again, hit the subscribe button, like, subscribe, and share. Thank you very much.